A tragedy in the remote village of Pavlovo, in the Vasilisa district, has shaken St. Petersburg. There, a local 30-year-old man, Sergey Belyaev, brutally murdered his family on St. Valentine's Day. A small village, just a few kilometers from St. Petersburg, a quiet, picturesque settlement, an ideal place for those who work in the metropolis but long for country life. I went up to the second floor to Vasilisa. She was no longer screaming. I took her in my arms, put her on the bed and covered her face with a pillow. The words that make my skin freeze. The killer says as if he were talking about shopping at the supermarket. Quiet, calm and unconcerned. Executed phrases are easy to fit into the protocol. The investigator, who has seen all sorts of things, smokes a few cigarettes one after another and sullenly quits. During 2 hours of interrogation, not a single muscle of his body shook. He squinted and broadcast how he destroyed traces of the crime. And at the same time, the operatives were taking the corpses out of the house. 4 disemboweled bodies. 2 women, a man and a 1.5-year-old child. They were all related to the killer. They nicknamed him Bloody Valentine. On February 14th last year, Sergey Belyaev killed his common-law wife, mother, father and daughter. The little girl's name was Vasilisa. It's about her last moments Daddy Beast tells with such astonishing equanimity. Experts will later say the girl cried before she died. About the disappearance of the Belyaev family began to talk on February 17th. On that day, to the district police officer appealed local resident Sergey. Disappeared wife, daughter and mother and father. They sorrowfully reported the 31-year-old man. It was the 3rd day since they had been away from home. Where their relatives could have disappeared to, the man didn't know. His wife and child seemed to be going to Gachina to her parents. According to the inconsolable Belyaev, his mother and father promised to give them a ride by car, but Lida and the baby never reached their destination. The cell phones of all family members are for some reason switched off. I think they were killed, Sergey suggested. Materials on the mysterious disappearance immediately passed to investigators. They, of course, opened a case and began the search. First, they went to Pavlovsky Proez 12, to the red brick house where the Belyaevs lived. When they saw the cars with flashing lights, the locals jumped out into the cold. Everyone wanted to talk to the police. Of course, the owner of the house, 58-year-old Alexander Belyaev, was respected by everyone here. A good, decent family. Alexander Vasilievich pulls the burden for everyone. He bought himself a car, got a job in a cab, said neighbor Olga Zakharova. His wife is nice. Spouses in the daughter-in-law and granddaughter do not dote. But to their son, Sashka, you look closely. He's a sponger, an egoist, doesn't work anywhere, sits on his parents' neck. Investigators found a baby carrier and diapers in the house. Doesn't look like Lida was going anywhere with the baby. Ran the numbers through the cell phone company. It turned out that the phones of the missing turned off, almost simultaneously from February 14 to February 15. The mother's cell phone was the last one turned off. All this was extremely suspicious, says senior investigator of the 1st Department for Investigation of Especially Important Cases, Georgy Spivakov. On August 11th, we came to the Belyaev's house with a search in the company of understanders. For the inspection of the house, they brought in dogs, specially trained for cadaver odor. At that time, Sergey was in police custody, giving a statement. On the floor, they found poorly washed stains of brown color. The trail led to the basement. They opened it, and there were 4 corpses bricked up under the foam. The bodies were stacked one on top of the other. At the bottom, the head of the family, then 25-year-old daughter-in-law Lida, followed by Sergey's mother, 53-year-old Irina Nikolaevna. On top was little Vasilisa. The investigators immediately called the station. Hearing the conversation, Belyaev demanded a lawyer. He wrote a confession of guilt and immediately wailed, "They interfered with my life." He pressed his lips together. Lush blonde Lida met Sergey in 2009. Shortly before that, the beau was released from prison. 6.5 years the man spent behind bars for the murder of an underage girl. He got out early on parole. But Lida, dark past suitor, did not care. In love closed her eyes in the fact that Belyaev had only 9 grades of education and did not work anywhere. In Pavlovo, the young people rented an apartment. For rent, the girl paid from her pocket. And after a couple of years, she became pregnant. The woman's happiness was unprecedented. Sergey several times raised his hand on Lidochka, but she did not want to leave, recalls the sister of the deceased. The girl was born in July 2012, named Vasilisa. The father of the head of the family insisted that the couple moved into his house. Lida and her daughter were accepted as relatives. But with the son of the parents, there were conflicts. Belyaev Sr. constantly pressured Sergey. "Stop sitting on my neck," he said. But nevertheless, he himself was looking for a job. Then the security guard arranged, then the builder. The working fervor was enough only for a week. And then Belyaev again pulled money from his parents. Those twisted as they could, rebuilt a spacious house in Pavlov, made additions to it which were rented out. Finally, the family split Sergey's new lover, a certain Marianne. Belyaev found her through a dating site in October 2012. Vasilisa was 4 months old at the time. It is not difficult to explain what Belyaev attracted the weaker sex. Outwardly slender, athletically complex man, tall brunette with a piercing look with a squint. Mariana was older than Sergey. She also had a daughter from a previous marriage. It seems that for Belyaev, a mature woman became an outlet. When they were together, all his domestic worries remained somewhere out there in Pavlovo. And although the man did not have a steady income, he found money for a new lover, threw flowers at her, and in the summer of 2013 even took Marianne with her mother and daughter in Sochi. These relations, by the way, he did not hide, because of which he had constant scandals with his parents. It came to absurdity. Marianne came for a lover in his car directly to the parents' house. Because of the intrigues on the side, his father stopped talking to Sergey and evicted him to a separate room in the house. There was a separate entrance, so the relatives managed not to meet. The only connection with parents remained little Vasya. For the sake of her and Lida, her mother and father tolerated the absent-minded Casanova. "Mariana and I will live here. I don't care about Lida." According to neighbors, such cries were constantly coming from the Belyaev's house. In St. Petersburg, love with Mariana. In Pavlovo, a hated common-law wife with a child. In me, accumulated negativity because of the fact that Lida was in my house. Relaxedly exhaled cigarette smoke in the office of the investigator Sergey. I had planned that Marianne and I would live there, but I couldn't persuade my father. At some point, the man even stopped arguing with his relatives. He withdrew into himself. He kept to himself. He had a plan, which he put into action by February 14th, such a twisted romance. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Belyaev called Marianne from an unknown number. "Come, baby, I'll introduce you to your parents," and whispered into the tube Sergey. As it turned out, an hour before, he had killed Lida, his mother and father. And after the call, he went to strangle his own daughter. The first to die was his common-law wife. Belyaev bludgeoned the girl with a water pipe in the kitchen. The mother came running to the screams. She did not even have time to realize what was happening when the pervert killed her too. The father had to come home from work. I put out the light in the house and waited. Sergey was babbling with the investigator, and Vasya heard everything, crying, but she was afraid to come down to me. I think she saw everything. We had to do something. When my father entered the house, Belyaev was already waiting for him. When he equaled the passage, Sergey hit him with a metal pipe. Did not hesitate, entered into the taste. On the body of each of the women counted at least 5 blows. The man had 10. The killer wrapped the heads of the victims with plastic bags and took the bodies to the basement. The daughter was wrapped in a sheet and taped with tape for safety. And around 11 p.m., Marianne pulled up to the Fort Focus house. Belyaev ordered her to put out her headlights and wait in the car. 15 minutes later, he came out. The festive night of all lovers. Day the couple spent in a house, stained with blood, with silent witnesses under the floor. "The parents are gone. They let us live here," Sergey told Marianne. The next day, the lovers drove to a construction store and bought several cylinders of assembly foam. The strangler carefully poured it over the bodies of the murdered, and then bricked up the door to the basement. Mariana now claims that she thought Sergey was doing repairs. Investigators arranged several confrontations and came to the conclusion that the woman was really in the dark. However, in the testimony of the couple, there are also inconsistencies. Belyaev says that he proposed to his mistress and they were going to get married, but she claims that she could not even think of such a thing. He seemed strange to me. I persuaded him to get a job, says Marianne. Sergey responded with excuses. Once in a text message he wrote, "My parents have influence over me. Why should I put up with it when I can make things easier?" Belyaev waited until 3 days later to file a missing persons report. Apparently, he hoped to avert suspicion. The house where the tragedy played out, by the way, was registered to his mother. That is, in case of her death, the inheritance would go to Sergey. Investigators say Belyaev was going to concretize the basement and live in this house with Marianne and her daughter. After the hype with the disappearance of the whole family calmed down, oddly enough, forensic experts found the man sane. They say the killer was fully aware of his actions. The defendant has an inflated level of self-esteem, a need for self-expression and realization of his own interests, a certain egocentrism and concentration on needs significant for himself. Psychiatrists dryly state. They also say that the murder was thought out thoroughly. The investigation of the case lasted a little over 9 months. He wanted love and got this guy in a cage, an eternal male company. In Vsevolozhsk District Court, 32-year-old Sergey Belyaev was found guilty for a particularly serious crime. Bloody Valentine was sentenced to life imprisonment. Can you imagine? And he still tried to appeal the verdict. Almost cries sister of the dead Lida Maria Voronina. The appeal, of course, was rejected. A small consolation for the relatives. But still, now the man is in the isolation center, waiting for the stage, they say, in the investigative department of the Investigative Committee for the Leningrad region. A black dolphin or a white swan awaits him. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories. Leave your comments and share your thoughts. Bye.